it really brought me back to a moment where Jesus has not came yet. So that means we still have work to do. And so we sit inside of these four walls in our comfy pews when the world right outside of these walls and your communities are dying. And when Jesus does come, what are we doing? They're going to be left behind. So when you sit in these pews, this is your refreshing, this is your refilling. But when you go outside of these four walls and you encounter the people that you work with, the people in your communities, your babysitters, all of these things, you are spreading the love of Jesus. So it brings me back to a scripture, and we were kind of talking about this, and this is not anywhere in the notes, this is just a little extra. But in Hebrews chapter 13, verse 13, it says, so we must arise and join him outside the religious walls and bear his disgrace. We must arise and go outside of the religious walls. And when I say religious walls, a lot of people want to think about the religious walls of a church building. Okay, can I just testify for a second that I lived my whole life as a young child thinking that, well, as long as I just, done what was right inside the church, everything's going to be okay. Religious walls can be a church building. But can I just have you just think outside of this for just a second? Do we not personally have religious walls built? I can think of when you just look at somebody, the world is telling you that you put them in a category. The world is telling you that that person's a little bit rougher than I am. Maybe, I just need to stay away from them. But see, Jesus, he didn't go hang out with the religious folks very much. Because when he did, he rebuked them because he said that their heart was not pure. They were not believing and doing the things in which Jesus has called us to do. Okay, so when you think about that, he was hanging with the drunkards. He was hanging with the sinners. He was hanging with all the people that when we go outside these four walls, we shun to the side. And we say, well, I'm a Christian and I don't need to hang out with them people. Okay, yeah, you're a Christian. You don't need to jump in and do the sin with them. But you need to go love on them and show them that there is somebody different, and that different is Jesus. So as we were talking about that, and that song was playing, come Jesus, come, be careful what you ask for. Be careful what you ask for, because there is going to be a day that he's coming, and there's going to be a judgment day. So I think in this fairy tale moment that we live in, the society is telling us to worry about ourselves. Well, as long as John goes to heaven, that's all I got to worry about. No, it needs to burden you to the point that you're willing to do whatever it takes. You're willing to sacrifice your own life. Jesus sacrificed his own life. He didn't have to do that. He did nothing wrong, but he sacrificed his life because he loved us to a point that he did not want to see us go to hell. And I encourage you, and I want you to think about this. Are you at that point in life where you say, Lord, you've blessed me, you've loved me, and I love you to the point that I'm willing to lay my life down to draw people closer to you? Absolutely not in the sermon, but that's just, you start talking about that in that song, and that just popped into my mind. And that's who we are. I'm John Hodges. I know most of you know me. If you don't know me, that's my name. And so I have recently, let me pull up my notes here. I've recently been just given a position or a title of National Anti-Human Trafficking Director of Mission M25. That's a mouthful to say. But I go to church at Urgent Church, which is in McLeansville, so I'm the connections pastor there. But I'm also the point man, or point of contact, however you want to say it, for Cornerstone Conference in Mission M25. So by a show of hand, how many people know who Mission M25 is? Okay, so we have a couple. So I'm going to try to enlighten you on who we are. And I'm going to throw another name out there, and this is kind of why we're here. How many people know who Magnolia Hope is? A couple. All right, well, I got a lot of work to do, Chad. And I'm just going to let you know that your pastor didn't give me a time frame of when church is over, so I guess we're just going to roll on. Sounds good. All right, that's what I like to hear. All right, so Mission M25, we are a motorcycle ministry. We are a part of IPHC, and we are part of the Cornerstone Conference. So we wear these vests, and that's our patch on the back. Now, as you can see, it's not a three-piece patch, and if you're anything in the motorcycle world, you understand what I'm talking about. We are not a 1% club, which are outlaw bikers. We're a motorcycle ministry group. So we hang out with the 1%ers. We don't take part in the 1%ers, if you understand what I'm saying. We hang out. We are like Jesus. We hang out with them. We go to the bars they're in. We go to the events that they host. We welcome them into the church. But I'm just going to be honest with you. You don't see a bunch of 1%ers that are going to, dare walk through those doors to come hang out with us. And it's not because they hate us. It's because how many people have ever been church hurt? Probably everybody in this room. If you really deep down thought about it, some point in your life you've been church hurt. I'm in that category. Well, what happens is, we run out and we try to beat them over the head with the Bible, and it just turns them off towards Christians. So what we're doing, where's it at? This ball now, right there, that we wear on our chest, that's one of the things that we stand for. And what that stands for is be a light, not a mouth. So we go out into the communities that we serve. We go into the bars with the one percenters. We hang out with them. We don't partake in their sin, but we show them the love of Jesus without beating them over the head with the Bible. So that's kind of what we do. I'm getting ready to take off on my motorcycle in September 5th or something. Anyway, so I'm going to ride from a group of us. We ride from Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, to San Diego, California, and we have to do that within 50 hours. So that is an Iron Butt Association ride. So it's a motorcycle challenge that is very hard. Do I have anybody that rides motorcycles in here? Or at one time did ride motorcycles? All right. See, everybody, look, our motorcycle, if I had to guess, our motorcycles guys, we just have a look. I used to be a fireman, and people say, yeah, you look like a fireman. And I'm like, what are you talking about? But us motorcycle guys, we have a look. Maybe a little rough around the edges. It's okay. But so it's a motorcycle challenge. So if you've ever been on a motorcycle, you understand how taxing that can be on your body. So I'm saying I'm getting ready to ride across this nation with like 2 hours of sleep probably in 2 days. Did that last year. We don't just do that to brag. We do it because how many people know Royal Home? Anybody? Okay. So Royal Home, and I'll kind of touch this a little bit. Royal Home is a ministry in Falcon, North Carolina. And so they created a women's shelter to encourage pro-life. So they'll bring in young mothers, and instead of aborting the babies, they give them an option. They give them some help. They send them to school. And if you've ever had kids, which most of us have, and I'm getting ready to have my third girl, so 3 girls, y'all pray for me. So I'll be spending a lot of time on my Harley. But it takes a lot of money to buy diapers. Because diapers and baby wipes, that butt gets changed multiple times a day, and the only thing that's going up is everything in the world. So the price of those diapers has gone through the roof. So what we do is we ride across the nation. We do this challenge because here's the reality of abortion, is it's radical. I mean, it is spread across this country, and it's almost a norm that, hey, do what you want to in your life as a young child. There's an option here so you don't ruin your life. And that's what it is. Everybody is saying, hey, if you have a child at a young age, you've ruined your life. Well, I had kids at a young age, and my life's not ruined. But see, the thing is, that's what this world is teaching everybody. That's what they're teaching our young kids. And so the Royal Home gives them an opportunity and a way out other than abortion. And then through that, they love on them. Well, so what we did as Mission M25 is, our prayer and hope is that the Lord burdens us to a point to where we're willing to lay down our life. We're willing to climb on those motorcycles and ride crazy amount of hours and miles, not just to be able to brag and say how cool we are and that we can ride long distance, but it's a radical ride. So we're taking a stand, and it's a radical stand because the sin is radical. If we were just going to come in and say, hey, look, we're just going to joyride, down to San Diego. Hey, I've never been, off the East Coast up until I joined this ministry. You would be like, okay, we're going to take 2 weeks. That's a vacation, right? No, we don't. It's not a vacation. I can tell you, I did it last year, and it took me, 2 weeks, 3 weeks after I got off that motorcycle to recover because my body was physically beat, to that point. So that's just one little section of what we do. We do this thing called Run for the Wall. And what that does, it supports our veterans, our MIAs, POWs, that kind of stuff. And so we ride from, and we are just an entity of Run for the Wall. Run for the Wall is huge. We're talking probably 5,000 or 6,000 motorcycles that ride across the country every year in May. And so what they do is they start in Ontario, California, and we ride across the country to the Vietnam Memorial Wall in Washington, D.C. And so what that does, we're bringing awareness. We stop. Now, this is not as intense as the diaper run. So we do that within 10 days. But like I said, each route has about 300 to 400 motorcycles in that route. So what Mission M25 did is, we stand for our military guys, our veterans. Because in Vietnam, I wasn't alive during this time, but talking to the guys, they weren't really welcomed home, right? Maybe you were in that war. And all I can say is I love you and welcome home and thank you for what you did. But not everybody welcomed them home into the way that we thought that us as Christians, because we love them, think that they should be welcomed home. And then so Gunny Gregory, he was a military guy. He created this thing. And so it was some big ride. And so we were like, Lord, we stand for our veterans. Now what can we do to show them that we stand? Because, see, a lot of times us in the Christian world, not necessarily this church and IPHC, but just Christians in general, we like to talk the talk, but we don't really want to walk the walk. Because walking the walk costs us something. It costs us our comfort, it costs us our peace, it costs us our money. All this time costs us our time, and we don't really like that because we like our comforts. So Mission M25, what we did, we said, all right, we're going to partner with Run for the Wall. Now what can we do that's not already being done that shows somebody that we love them? Well, like I said, Ball Nam's what we stand for. So we said, okay, here's what we can do. We'll provide waters and Gatorades to all these riders. So that's how we started at Run for the Wall. Our national director, Gary Bird, I don't know if you've ever had him come speak here or not, or if you've ever heard him. Great guy, love him to death, talk to him all the time. But he actually started that. And he'll tell you that it was not easy. He was not welcomed because he wore this patch here. And he stood for Christianity. And so there was actually times that people tried to run him off the road. They tried to leave him at stops. They would try to deflate his tires. I mean, they would, because they were military guys that weren't welcomed home and that were shunned by Christian folks. So automatically they had their guard up. But he was persistent. How many know that persistency is key when it comes to ministry? You got to be persistent. If you go for a little bit, they're going to be like, well, I'll outlast this, just watch. And then most of the time they're right. But if you're persistent, it got to a point now that we actually do hydration. So we continue now for three of the routes, to do hydration. So we do waters, Gatorades, cooling towels, snacks, and all that is kind of donated through local churches. They donate to Mission M25, and we coordinate all of that. But we took it a step further, because how many of y'all that rode a Harley? Okay, and I ride a Harley, and he does too. But at some point, it's going to break, especially if you're riding across country. It's not a Goldwing, because Goldwings are not as cool as Harleys, but they're actually more reliable. So if you rode a Goldwing, you've probably never been stranded on the side of the road. But it's not a good feeling. So what we decided was, hey, what does it cost us to put a trailer and a truck behind the group? And when you break down, we stop. Hey, we love you. If you have a medical emergency, I'm medically trained, so I stop. I give you medical attention until fire and EMS can get there. If you have a wreck, we stop. We'll provide medical assistance until they get there. But we're not just going to leave you stranded on the side of the road. We're going to load your bike and take you somewhere to get fixed. And I will tell you, the hydration's great because it gets hot in Arizona. It's like 110 degrees, and it's hot. And then you ride a Harley, and it bakes you from the inside and the outside from the sun. So we do that. But Herman Strickland, who is part of the Journey Church in Siler City and South Henderson up in Henderson, up that way. And so he actually will tell you multiple stories. A great guy, I love talking with him, about how many times he's been able to witness to somebody in his truck hauling them to a dealership. So if we were just saying, you know what, good luck, he's probably ministered to more people than we even know because he loved them. And he showed them that he loved them, and then he offered a service, and we were just loving them, not beating them over the head with a Bible. So that's one thing we do. We do a lot of other different things also, but this new thing that I'm here to talk to you about is a freedom run. Now, a freedom run, like I said, I was tasked, and I'll kind of tell you how that kind of came about here in a second, but I was tasked with creating an event, creating a run that supports the fight against human trafficking. Human trafficking is a big deal. It's not really one of those topics that people like to talk about because it's uncomfortable. You don't want to think about, our children being sex trafficked and being slaves to people. But it happens all the time. And we used to think, and I know we got some young kids, so I'm gonna keep it rated. But it's the truth that we live in every day. And it happens right in our back door. And so I've got a video, Avery, if you want to get it ready. And it's of Magnolia Hope and what they are, and they're going to tell you more about them, and they'll explain it way better than I can. But they are a part of Falcons Children's Home, and that is Fayetteville. It's in an undisclosed location where the girls stay. Nobody knows. but it's in the Fayetteville, that kind of area down that ways. So it's in North Carolina. So it's not like I'm here talking about somebody that's in a third world country. No, they're right here in our back door. So if you've got it ready to play, I'm ready for it.
Hi, my name is Michael Arena, and I'm a director of Magnolia Hope, which is a residential program for Falcon Children's Home that's focused on children recovered from sex trafficking. Currently in the U.S., it's estimated that over 300 to 400,000 children enter into sex trafficking situations each year, and that's in the U.S. alone.
Magnolia Hope is an outreach of Falcon Children's Home and is a residential program aimed at restorative care for girls aged 11 to 18 coming out of sex trafficking.
With estimates of 300 to 400,000 child victims in the U.S. alone each year. This is a very big issue, with only in the U.S. 200 beds focused on helping them in the restorative plan.
We will be the only licensed home in the entire state of North Carolina, and what that means is not only can we take girls that are coming from private homes, so in the custody of their parents, but also girls that are coming from the child welfare system. Instead of them going to foster homes that haven't necessarily received the specialized training that these girls need, they can come to our program and receive the treatment that they need for their specific trauma.
Many people ask, how do these kids get in these situations? A lot of these kids are wooed by older men. They're groomed in social media. One of the myths we hear is that we believe that this kind of situation happens only in third world countries or anywhere else other than America. But the truth of the matter is that it's actually found in our communities, in our backyards, where we're just oblivious to it because we're unaware of it.
Our desire at Magnolia Hope is to operate as a greenhouse of sorts, where we can bring these girls in from the harsh environment and offer them a safe and nurturing home.
The truth of the matter is that there's a lot of funding that goes to the recovery of the children, but very few dollars are actually spent on the restorative care.
We're located in an undisclosed location in eastern North Carolina, where the girls receive trauma-informed therapies, on-site schooling, life skills classes, gardening classes, and so much more.
These kids need our help, and it's going to take our entire communities to come together to fight for them.
So that's Magnolia Hope, and that's what they do. Michael, and I'll tell you the brief story of how all this kind of happened and then how I got connected with Michael. So about last year or so, at this time frame, I was going through a transition period in my Christian walk, and I was praying to God. I said, there's got to be something deeper that you want me to do other than just the everyday Christian walk. I was ministering to people in my back door, but I felt like there was something bigger that he had called me to. And so, every time I tell the story, I kind of laugh, and me and my wife have talked about this, and my brother John here, and we laugh about this because I say, be careful what you pray for, because the answer, you might be surprised. So I was praying, I was like, Lord, give me something, give me a task, give me an action that I can kind of put to my faith. So one night I had a dream, and the dream was I was searching down a long hallway. I was searching for something, I don't know what it was. And all of a sudden, in the distance, I heard a faint cry. And so, like I said, I have young kids and I have young daughters. So, my natural ear is perked up when I hear a child crying. So I go looking for this source of the cry. And when I opened one of the doors, in the very corner, it was just one light in the dark room. And I kind of made this turn. And when I did, all I saw was a young girl sitting in a ball, chained on her hands and feet. And she was crying. And in an instant, there's not many times that I would say I've heard like an audible voice of God or anything like that. But in this dream, I heard the words, "Save my children." It scared me to the point, and I don't know if you've ever had a dream that scared you to the point, I jumped out of bed and my heart was racing. And I said, man, that's a scary dream. I was just thinking, man, that's a scary dream. So I was like, okay, I'm going to go back to sleep. And every time that I tried this 3 or 4 times, all I kept hearing was "Save my children," and that little girl was popping up. So I was like, okay, Lord, I don't know what you're trying to do here, but I'm going to get up. And so I went into our little living room area. We have like a little bar. And so I was praying. I was like, I need some clarification on this. I don't know what you want me to do. Because I have a heart for young kids already. And I'm like, okay, are you trying to pull me back into, like youth ministry, kids ministries? Like, what are you trying to do here? And as I was praying, every time that I thought about sex trafficking, all I could do was weep. And so all that being said, I was like, okay, Lord, I don't have a platform. How many people in their Christian life feel like God's telling you to do something and you're like, but Lord, I don't have a platform? That was me. I sat there and I said, Lord, I don't have a platform for this. I'm not a pastor of a church, right? I don't have a platform to go fight against this. And to be honest with you, I don't want to fight against it because, like I said, I was a fireman and I dealt with young kids dying, and that was the reason why I pulled out, because it just broke me to the point where I didn't want to see that anymore. So I'm like, Lord, why are you pushing me back into something that's going to cause me to go back to that place that I didn't really want to be in the first place? But see, what happens, oftentimes the Lord will use your heart. My heart's for kids. He's using that to push me down this avenue to fight against this horrible sin and crime that's happening right in our back door. So as I was saying, I didn't have a platform. And I was praying, and I prayed for weeks about this, I don't have a platform, I don't know what to do. And then he eventually one day said, "Don't you have a Harley?" I said, "Yeah, but I'm doing all these other things. I don't have time to do this." He's like, "That's your platform." Because I don't know about you, but if you've ever rode a motorcycle, when you pull up and there's a bunch of kids, they all are drawn to a motorcycle. And they all want to come see what you're about. And they all want to come sit on your motorcycle. And they all just want to love on you, and it's just something that draws them to you. And so I was like, okay, Lord, here's what I'll do. I'll just host a benefit ride, a local benefit ride at my local church, and we'll raise money and we'll donate it to somebody. And so that's how I got connected with Michael at Magnolia Hope. I was talking to the conference headquarters at Cornerstone, and I'm like, hey, look, this is what I want to do. I had a dream. I just want to put some action to this. They're like, well, have you ever heard of Magnolia Hope? And at that time, I had not. And remember, I actively ride for Falcons Children's Home, an entity of Falcons Children's Homes. I had no clue that Magnolia Hope even existed, and they were an entity of the structure that we used to ride for. So that was when I realized that, hey, maybe people don't realize that this is such a problem. So hosted that event, went great, and I was like, cool, I'll just do that every year. We'll donate the money. No big deal. And then the Lord kept speaking to me. He said, no, there's something bigger I want you to do here. And so I was talking to Gary Bird, the national director of M25, and I said, hey, look, I feel like the Lord is calling me something bigger here, and I don't know what it is. And he said, my prayer has been for about 10 years now. He's like, we're too busy and caught up in all this other ministries we're doing. He said, but I wanted to do something for the human trafficking kids. I want to do something for them. He said, but my prayer has been that the Lord would send me that right person that could kick this thing off. And he said, I feel like you're an answer to my prayer. He'd been praying for 10 years that somebody would come along. I was just praying, hey, Lord, use me in some way and capacity that you see fit. And this is where he saw fit. So I'm just going to run through some numbers real quick. The statistics of human trafficking are crazy. And that video has been many, many years ago. So here it is. Globally, it's estimated that over 40 million victims are victims of human trafficking every year. So in the United States, the National Human Trafficking Hotline reported over 27,000 contacts in 2022, with a significant portion of those being sex trafficking. Let's get a little closer to home because those are, that's a broad picture. So North Carolina is a significant hotspot for human trafficking, consistently ranking among the top 10 states. Remember, third world country? No, it's right here in our backyard. So in 2022, North Carolina reported over 500 cases of human trafficking, with many of those involving sex trafficking. Why is that such an alarming number? Is because in 2019, that number was 250. So just in a matter of 3 years, we doubled. those numbers are alarming, but let me just introduce you to a stat that'll probably make you cringe in your seat. So out of those kids, the United States Department of Justice reports that approximately 40% of children that are trafficked involve a family member as their trafficker. Their own parents, their own step-parents are trafficking their own kids. 40%. Despite the severity of this issue, there's roughly only 30 beds in North Carolina that are solely dedicated and specialize in human trafficking. Yes, there's beds out there, but they're not specialized only in human trafficking. And so those beds get, bought up and used for all kinds of different reasons, and it's kind of just a hub of sorts that just kind of houses them and gets them out of the environment. But after that, there's no care that's really given. So 30 beds in North Carolina. So it's a big issue. So during our benefit ride, I was talking with Michael. He came down. That was the first time I actually met him. And he said, you'd be so surprised how many children are being trafficked in your back door. And I'm in McLeansville, so not far from here. He said, I know of 4 girls right now that we're trying to get out of their homes that were in 15 to 20 mile radius of my church. Well, do you know what 15 and 20 mile radius is from my church? Your church. So how many are in your back door in your neighborhood that are being trafficked that we don't even know about? See, everybody wants to think that human trafficking is like the movie Sounds of Freedom, I think is what it's called. Has anybody watched that movie, Sounds of Freedom? So everybody wants to automatically think human trafficking is that. Yes, it is that. But that's a very small portion of what that is. See, the thing about it is sex trafficking is not even the biggest part of human trafficking. We all just go there because that's probably the worst, act of trafficking is that. Because we think about, our young daughters being sold for that purpose. And so, but there's other entities and sins and crimes in the human trafficking world that's not that. You have labor. How many kids are being forced to work for what we buy every day? So that's the biggest one, is labor trafficking. But Magnolia Hope, they specialize in the sex trafficking part, so I'm not going to chase that rabbit because we'd be here all day of all the different ways that human trafficking affects our children today. But so common ways girls are pulled into trafficking. The traffickers often prey on vulnerabilities, exploiting situations, and then of desperation and trust, because who knows that our kids are so trusting. They're just so naturally trusting at a young age, and people prey on that vulnerability. So the first way is false promises of employment and education. So many victims are deceived by traffickers promising legitimate jobs, education opportunities, or even modeling contracts. But once they get them away from their people, away from their connection, away from their community, before they know it, now they're roped into sex trafficking. So that's one way. A second way is romantic relationships. Traffickers often pose as a loving boyfriend, showering their victims with gifts, and affection and all of this. And then once that trust is established, they then begin to manipulate and control that person. And before they Number 3, the way that we all kind of vision it, is kidnapping and adoption. In these cases, victims are actually forced and taken away from their families and actively forced to do this act. And the way that they keep them in line is by threatening their family, threatening their life, and then belittling them as a person. The fourth way is online grooming. So traffickers use social media and online platforms to identify and groom potential victims. They build trust and relationships online, eventually leading to trafficking. If you didn't catch a common theme there, was trust. And here's the thing. Out of all of this, and I want to build an education system that educates our people of what this actually is. So that's in the works. In those 4 things, if we step up and love these kids, because the sad reality is not everybody grows up in a loving home. Our kids don't grow up in a loving home. So I grew up in a single parent home. My dad was absent. My mom, thank God, she loved us enough that she taught us what a trust really was. But think about the online social media and how prevalent that is in our young kids' life. And then think about the kids that don't have loving parents, that they just do what they want to. And somebody online is telling them that they love them. Remember, the kid's natural reaction is to trust and love. That's what they seek. And they fall in love with this person. And then there's a communication, and then they trust them. And then they're like, hey, won't you just come live with me? I'll pick you up at the end of your street. And that's when we get the runaways. Oh, they were crazy. They just ran away. There was nothing we could do for them. No, the chances are there's a high percentage of those that are now being trafficked. So you might be thinking, okay, well, all that sounds pretty bad, but how does that tie into Christianity? Let's dive into some scripture that's going to help us figure out what we as Christians are supposed to do. So we first must recognize what the human life is valued at. So in Genesis chapter 1, verse 27, it says this: So God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God, he created them, male and female. He created them. So this explains that every life has a purpose. You weren't brought into this world without a purpose. Because it says that he knew you before he was even conceived in the womb. It's just like how we ride for pro-life. We ride for that baby because it has a purpose. It was chosen by God to fulfill a purpose. So what human trafficking does is it is a direct attack on what God has put in place of human life. Because what they do is they threaten them, like I said, but they also beat them down and belittle them and tell them that their life is not worth anything. And it just keeps them in that spiral. And let's just be honest, if you were in that situation and every day you were told that you were worth nothing and that act was the only thing that you were worth and that's the only reason that you're around, you start to believe what you're told. So this is a direct attack on the image that God's children have and what he has called us to. So in Isaiah 61, verse 1 and 3, I'm not going to read that, but that is a prophetic word and a promise of somebody that is going to come in and is going to set things right. And we all know that person to be Jesus. So in Luke chapter 4, verse 18 and 19, Jesus himself requotes the passage. That's why I'm not going to read it. I'll read it one time. He requotes the passage declaring that it is fulfilled within him. So it says this: The Spirit of the Lord is on me because he has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim freedom for the prisoners, recovery of sight for the blind, to set the oppressed free, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor. Think about the words that he's saying there. So Jesus came to set free those in bondage, both spiritually and physically, because it says that he proclaimed freedom for the prisoners. What I think when I think of a prisoner, somebody behind bars, right? It's a physical imprisonment. And he's recovering the sight of the blind. You can't see, that's a physical. He is, bringing the sight back to the blind. That's a physical. But here's where I think we get into the spiritual realm of things. Set the oppressed free. To be oppressed might not be a physical state. Mental illness is running rampant, and it's oppression of the mind. You're oppressed by something. And a lot of that, most of the time, is spiritual oppression. So he's just saying, I'm here to heal the physical. He says, I'm here to heal the spiritual and the physical. So what do we have in trafficking? We have both aspects of that. They're physically being held against their will to do an act. Also, spiritually, they're being beaten down and told them that they're not what God has told them they could be. So it's a dual attack on our children. So in James chapter 1, verse 27, he reminds us of what true religion looks like. So true religion is that God our Father accepts as pure and faultless is this: to look after orphans and widows in their distress, to keep oneself from being polluted by this world. So we're looking after orphans and widows in distress. So this call is care for the vulnerable. Right? We all think of widows and orphans, but we can all agree that they're a vulnerable people. So he's calling, and that vulnerability extends to the kids of human trafficking. So we must be the hands and feet and reach out with love and support. But see, the thing about this ministry, and I've had to learn this because, like I said, I grew up in church. And I'm just a person like everybody else. And see, the thing about us is we like to see the fruit of our labor. We like to see that person come down to the altar and get prayed for and get saved and watch them, be revitalized and go out and minister and save other people. But the thing about this minister that I had to learn, and this was one of the first things that Michael said to me, because he sees it all the time. He said, I just want you to know you're never going to meet these girls. You're never going to know what they do. You'll never know how they ended up. You'll never know how you impact their life. And he said, if that's something you can't accept, then you need to go find another ministry. And at first, I was talking to my wife, and I said, man, that was kind of cruel. I didn't really know how to take that. But he has seen it so many times. People come in and try to love on these girls and then back out. They've seen that their whole life. So they are protecting them from that. But there's also people that are actively hunting them down to put them back, to draw them right back in. So they can't do that. But so as Christians, we have to get past the fact of seeing the fruits of our labors come to pass and just be the hands and feet of Jesus. And then let whatever Jesus wants to do, that's what he's going to do. Because last time I checked, there's not any kind of power that I have that I can physically come down here and justify them and make them right with God. That's only between them and God. Now, the Holy Spirit lives within me, and I can go out and preach the good news and bring them in and love them and show them that, hey, look, you have a different option in life. But I can't do that. Okay? That's only God. If I were to come in here and say, yeah, hey, come on down here, I'll get you saved right now. I'm going to do it for you. Don't worry. Drop an offering in the plate on the way out. Then I'm lying to you. I'm misleading you. But I'm going to lead you to the person that can, and I'll be glad to walk with you and hold your hand. See, that's what we have to get to. We have to get to that point of it doesn't matter what happens, but we love this person so much that it breaks our heart to see them die and go to hell. How many people know prayer is powerful? Right? Prayer is powerful. Action's powerful. But see, here's the thing. In Ephesians chapter 6, verse 12, it reminds us just how powerful prayer can be. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. This battle is not against flesh and blood. See, we often want to go out there and we want to grab that person by the neck and strangle them because they're trafficking kids. But it's against the spiritual darkness that lives within them. That's the real battle. That's what we're really fighting. And that's a hard battle because, like I said, we like to be physical. We're physical people. We live in the physical. But this battle is going to be won in the spiritual. We're going to have to rely on our prayers and our actions to allow Jesus and the spiritual angels in the heavenly realm to come down and fight this battle for us without any expectation that we'll ever see it to come pass. This is not a short-term battle, because if it was, it would be over, because there's people fighting it. This is going to be a long-term battle that we all have to partake in. So we must commit ourselves to intense prayer, asking God to bring freedom to the captives, justice to the oppressors, and healing to the wounded, and restoration to the children. And I've got here in my notes, but also to the oppressor. Because see, would we not be contradicting ourselves if we said, Jesus loves everybody except that person that oppressed that child? But if we look back in Genesis, doesn't it tell us that every person is made in the image of God and has a purpose, God's purpose? So this is the hardest part of all this, is we have to love that person that is oppressing that child the same way that we love that child, because they're both childs of God. We can't forget that part, because without that part, I don't feel like we're accomplishing anything. Because see, the thing about it is, if we can love the oppressor to the point that we draw him closer to God, and then his life is changed, he's physically and spiritually a changed person. If we pull that child from that oppressor and we rescue him and we bring them over here and we're loving and nurturing them and turn our back to that person, what do you think they're going to do? They're not going to cry about it. They're going to go get them another child, and they're going to do the same thing. So we're not really gaining any ground here, because we want to see restoration for all. That's how we're going to win. So 3 points of action. I like to give people action points because, like I said, prayer is awesome. We need to pray, but we also need to put some of this stuff to action. Because without action, nothing physically is going to change here. So education and awareness. So we must inform ourselves and others about the realities of what human trafficking really is. Use social media. Social media is big. It's a good tool, but we can use it in a way that's going to help us fight this battle. Community events, church gatherings, like we're doing today, to help us spread awareness of what actually human trafficking looks like. Remember, I said, it doesn't always look like somebody being snatched with chains. Most of the time, you walk right by them in the grocery store. You walk right by them at the fuel stop. You walk right by them and you have no clue that they're in human trafficking. So second way is support an anti-trafficking organization. Like I said, this is a hard ministry to be in. If you don't believe us, ask us. We'll tell you, ever since we decided to tackle this thing, it's been, the devil on our back, left and right, just beating us down. So this is not an easy ministry to be in. But everybody can play a role. So you donate your time, your money, your resources to organizations that are designed to fight human trafficking. I had to learn this. Because I didn't really know. I was like you. I thought human trafficking was snatching kids, third world problem, until I actually dove in here and was learning and talking to people. And it is so complex to the point where the words coming out of your mouth make a difference. I'm not trained in that, right? I'm just a crazy biker that loves God and that loves people. So I support other organizations that have that training. That's their specialty. And I say, hey, look, do whatever you need to do. I'm here to support you. So that's what we're here to do. And then advocate for policy change. I don't talk politics while I'm preaching. But we got an election coming up. Have you ever considered looking and seeing where they stand on human trafficking? Okay. You can also write to, the Senate, write to the House, write to all these people you might know and say, hey, look, this is a big deal in our area. How can we fight it? We want you on our side to fight this thing. And that's how we can create some change. So in closing, let's be reminded by the words in Proverbs 31, verse 8 and 9. It says, speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves. Ensure justice for those being crushed. Yes, speak up for the poor and helpless and see that they get justice. And that's what we're riding for. We're riding to bring awareness. We're riding to be the voice for those kids that don't have a voice. And so that is what has broke our heart. And that's what we're here to do. So this is our patch. Let me just talk a little bit about the patch. Because I don't even know if I told you what ride we're doing. Anyways, let me describe that. So we're doing this thing called the Freedom Run. And right down here it says 1,000 miles in 24 hours. And we're riding to stop human trafficking. And so here's the motorcycle. That's our patch in the center. But here it might be hard to see, but that's the chain link. And that motorcycle's busting through the chains. And so that's what we're thinking. We're thinking we're going to ride. And see, the thing about it is I've rode across this country multiple times by now. And we don't pride ourselves on getting people saved and leading them to Jesus. That's just not what we do. I mean, we will. If that's what you need, we'll be there. But see, we realize that everybody plays a role in salvation. And so we see ourselves, because if you can envision this, a Harley makes a loud rumble when you're riding down the road, and when you get a pack of them, you can hear them coming from miles. So we see that as we're tilling up the ground. We're tilling up the ground as we ride. We are planting seeds here and there, but most of the time we're just tilling up the ground. We're loving on people. We're showing them, hey, the church loves you. We love you. By all means, we'll walk through salvation with you. We'll help you pray about it. We'll be with you. But we're tilling the ground. And then so what we're thinking is the local church in that area where we stop and till the ground, that's when y'all plant the seeds. Do I got any farmers in here or people that like to plant stuff? Oh, Lord, help us. All right, so help me envision this, right? All right, so you plant a seed. You got to till the ground first, because if you just throw seed out there, most of the time it's not going to grow. All right, so you got to till up the ground. And you see this, we live in the country. You see all these fields, and you see the tractors, and they're tilling up the ground, and they're maintaining the grounds. And then they go through and they plant the seed. Well, the thing about it is you got to water that seed for it to grow, right? Okay, there's another aspect to that. When that plant starts to spring up and it starts to grow, what happens next is whatever you do next is vital if that plant is going to live or not. Because before you know it, your seed's growing great. But naturally, there's weeds that are growing right beside your plant. And if you don't pluck those weeds out and get them out of there, your plant's going to die. It's going to overtake it. So maybe in Christian life, have you ever thought about within your body to be like, you know what, I see that person's struggling. They're just not on as fire for God as they used to be. do they have some weeds in their life that maybe I can come and love on them and pluck them and get rid of them and help bring them back up? Because ultimately, we want to see you flourish. We want to see your flowers come out. We want to see you produce the fruit on the vines that God's intended you to. So we're there to till the ground. We're relying on you to plant the seed, to water the seed, to pluck the weeds, whatever that process is, and everybody's process is different. But so that's how we envision ourselves. And so as we do this, we're going to ride 1,000 miles in 24 hours. So that is another Iron Butt Association ride. It's a challenge. So we're saying, hey, look, we're willing to lay it all down because there's a good chance you fall asleep, because we're going to leave McLeansville on October 11th. Hey, will you pull that flyer up so I make sure I get the right day? I'm pretty sure it's October 11th. Yeah, October 11th, we're going to leave my church, Urgent Church, in McLeansville. We're going to have a kickoff service at 6:30 that night. If you can come, that would be great. We're going to see us out, a group of us. I think there's 4 committed now to ride this. And so we're going to ride out, and we're going to ride all night. We're going to head down to Asheville, head down to Atlanta, head down basically to Jacksonville, Florida, head up 95, and we're going to stop. Our last stop's going to be at Falcon. And so we're riding through the night. We're only stopping for 15 to 20 minutes at each fuel stop. So that's no sleep, no real good food, and we're just riding, right? So it's a dangerous ride. We're willing to lay it all down because we believe in the cause. So we're going to ride 1,000 miles in 24 hours. So what we're doing, this is how we're raising money, is we're saying, okay, there's 4 of us, so our goal is $4,000. So if we can get $1 per mile sponsored, and all this money goes directly to Magnolia Hope, we're footing our own bill for food, gas, that kind of stuff, maintenance on our bikes. And so I am proud to say I had a goal of $3,000 in mind. I said, what's a realistic expectation of what I can do? $3,000. Let's see, I've stopped at one church so far, and then just random people donating. We're already halfway to that goal. So we already have over $1,500 raised towards this goal. So, momentum is building. We have traction going. So we're going to jump on our scooters, and we're going to ride for 1,000 miles. But we're not just going to ride to raise money. Like I said, I want to educate people. So what we're doing, we're in the process of creating a brochure that has, who Magnolia Hope is, because we're trying to get their name out there, because there's so many people that might know agencies. I mean, you would be surprised through me speaking on this how many people that catch me at the door and they're like, hey, I deal with this all the time. And I'm like, sweet, let's hook up and let's link up. But so we want to raise awareness, but then we want to give you some action to that awareness. So actually in this brochure, we're going to have things to look for and then what to do if you see it, right? Because I want to create a change. We want to change people. We want to change this. We want to combat this. And that's one of the ways we're going to do it. And so we're actually creating a brochure that we're going to hand out at fuel stops. And like I said, people are attracted to motorcycles, so most of the time when we stop and they see 4 or 5 of us rolling in, they're like, hey, what are y'all doing? And we have these big things across our windshields that say Freedom Run, and we're like, hey, here's a brochure. This is what we're doing. See if you can fight, get in the fight. And that's what my encouragement is to get into the fight. You get a lot of people that come in here asking for money. I get it. I'm not asking for your money. I'm saying, hey, if you want to donate to Magnolia Hope, great. But my main objective for being here today is to bring awareness to what's going on. Right? I want you to be aware that, hey, this is happening in our backyard. I did not know that. How can I get into the fight? How can I look out for these kids? How can I love on these people? That's what the end goal is. So I actually had a really nice lady. She sewed me a bunch of prayer cloths, a bunch of them. And so I started thinking, I said, Lord, what can I do? I want these girls, we can't physically go out there and hug them. Like I said, we'll never probably meet them. I said, well, what's one thing we can do that shows them that, hey, the church loves you. Like, you matter to us. Even though we can't physically come love on you and show you, but we're out here risking our lives on motorcycles. We're out here, we're donating our funds. But what's that action that directly impacts the girls? And this is what we came up with, was prayer cloths. So my goal is, at every stop, here in a minute, I'm going to ask everybody to come down, and I want to pray over 2 prayer cloths at every church I stop at. And what I'm going to do when we get to Falcon at the end, we're going to anoint these things with oil, we're going to pray over them, and we're actually going to seek the face of God, that these prayer cloths bring some sort of godly spiritual healing into their life. And it's just a little symbol that says, hey, somebody loves you. Like, we cared enough. These were hand knitted by a lady in her rocking chair, and she prayed the whole time she knitted. And so, okay, that's one person. I don't know how many people we have here, 40, 30, I don't know how many people. But okay, we're all in this room. We love you enough. We're all going to pray over. We're going to take time out of our day, away from our good lunch that I know everybody's looking forward to, and we're going to lay hands and anoint these things with oil, and we're actually going to pray, and we're going to seek the face of God to stir our hearts in such a way that we see them change, but we get out in our communities and create a difference. If I had one thing I would just want you to know is this: I'm just a crazy biker that loves to throw my leg over that motorcycle and ride and see this country and be with brothers like John. But I love God in such a way that I want to see an impact to everybody we contact. So if there was one thing that I could just get across, is just know that me, an old biker, I'm not a pastor of no church. I don't have a church, anything like that. I just sit in the pew. I mean, I help do some things, but God will use you in a way to make a difference in ways that you had no clue were even possible. So the enemy wants to beat you down and keep you sitting comfortable in your seat. We were talking about this morning. We were laughing. And I said, in 2015, we were in Falcon, North Carolina, and they do this thing called Harvest Train every year. And so the kids there, it's an orphanage, and so they put on this big play. If you've never been, it's pretty cool. And I was in a place, I had just had my first daughter. I was running from God, but I was playing church. Because I knew, I'm a dad now. I need to go to church, because the statistics of if a dad goes to church, the kids go. I mean, if you don't know that, look it up. It's staggering. But I said, I got to play church, because I got to have my kids go to church, and I knew what was right. But I was running. I didn't want anything to do with it. I was just playing church. And so little did I know, Gary Bird, our national president, and Mark Richardson, our old pastor, they rode in on their motorcycles, and they were promoting the diaper run. It was like their first kickoff. And I said, man, that's cool. I looked at my wife and said, man, that's cool. Like, how cool would that be to ride a motorcycle and do that? Little did I know that the Lord would open that door for me to get on a motorcycle, which I was definitely scared of, partake in the diaper run, but then also use it in a way that now we get to fight human trafficking. So, say all that to say this is, God will use you in ways that he's not going to use your pastor. God's going to use you in your communities to touch people that I can't touch, that he can't touch, that you can't touch. So everybody's place, everybody has a purpose. So just allow God, pray, man. Pray that he breaks your heart to the point that you have to do something, because sitting still is not an option. And I guarantee you, you're going to be amazed about what happens. So I'm going to stop rambling on so we can get on with it. If you would, could we all gather at the altar? I just want to anoint these prayer cloths. We want to pray. But then also what I want to do, after we anoint these prayer cloths, I want us all to link hands and arms up here. And let's unite as Pleasant Garden. And let's pray for the community that you're serving. And that you get into the fight. And that people come to see a change. Avery, if you just want to play, I don't know if you have any music or anything you want to play during this. Come Jesus Come. Can you play that for us? Yeah. Yes. So whoever wants that one. And I'm going to bring this one on this side of the room. Thank you.
To my knees and pray.
I want you all to focus on praying.
Come, Jesus, come.
Okay, and I'm going to have them pray for something different. But
Today be the
God knows
day.
who this is going to go to. And that person is going to need to be restored.
Sometimes I feel
This person needs restoration. And so
like
don't
I'm
pray
gonna
for
break,
this one. I'm telling you, whoever gets it, they're going to need that. So
but I'm holding on to a hope that won't fade. Come, Jesus, come. Jesus, come, Jesus, come. There'll be no war, and there'll be no change when Jesus comes. Let today be the day. He'll come for the weak and the strong just say, and all will believe in the power of his name. And come, Jesus, come. We've been waiting so long for the day you'll return to heal every hurt and right every wrong. We need you right now. Come and turn this around. Deep down I know this world isn't home. Come, Jesus, come. Come, Jesus,
So as we transition, I want you, as
come. One day you'll
Pentecostal
come
Holiness Church, I'm assuming you still call it the Pentecostal Holiness. I
and
want
we'll
y'all to
stand
lock
face to
arms, lock
face.
hands, whatever you want to do, and we're gonna unite as a
Come
church.
and lay it all down.
We're gonna pray that you can go out into this community and the people that
'Cause
are
it
hurting
might
are
be
gonna feel the
today.
draw, the Holy Spirit coming out of this place in such a way.
The time is right now.
Okay, and then we're gonna pray that we take our faith and go outside of these.
There's no need
and
to
go and be
wait.
the hands and feet of Jesus. So I'm gonna ask your pastor to lead this prayer since this is your
The
community.
past will
He'll
be
lead us in
washed
prayer.
by rivers of grace. Come, Jesus, come. We've been waiting so long for the day you return to heal every hurt and right every wrong. We need you right now. Come and turn this around. Deep down I know this world isn't home. Come, Jesus, come. Come, Jesus, come. Come, Jesus, come. Come, Jesus, come. Sometimes I fall